Okay. Should we start? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the book launch of Tales of Agnimitra and Tamanna by Amber Ramosa Nagori. Amber is a writer and a novelist. Tales of Agnimitra and Tamanna is her second novel. She has previously authored Nagori, Voice of Conscience. Amber has also written extensively on art, politics, and education. She has worked with the Dawn newspaper, Aga Khan University, and the Institute for Ismaili Studies in London. She is also a special needs educator and has taught at schools in the UK. We also have with us Mr. Athar Tahir, who is a poet, novelist, as well as a calligraph artist, art critic, and art historian. Mr. Tahir's published works have won 12 international and national awards, including Pakistan's highest award for literature in English, the Patras Bukhari, 4 times. He has received the Tamgha Imtiyaz and the Sitara Imtiyaz. Please give a hand to both our panelists. So before we start the discussion, I'd like to kind of express my thoughts on the book. I just finished it a few days ago, and I was really fascinated by the intersection of old world charm with contemporary perspectives. You know, how you have juxtaposed the splendor and majesty of the classical era with just the practicality of contemporary urban life. And my biggest takeaway from the book was that regardless of the historical era in which we exist, the essence of humanity remains the same. The need to belong, the struggle for identity, whether to yield to temptation or not, the desire to love and be loved. Those themes, I think, transcend age and time and race and religion. And I think you've done a wonderful job weaving those themes seamlessly within the narrative arc. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to give us a brief overview of your writing process and your inspiration behind this.
Thank you, Kamila, for the kind introduction, and to Amina and her team, especially Nadia, for publishing the book, as well as for the event today, and to the audience for coming on a Sunday afternoon. In fact, a friend said that he's given up his precious nap time, so if anybody else has also given up their Sunday siesta, your sacrifice is much appreciated. So Umberto Eco once said that a book says more than its author. I'm sure once you read the book, you will bring in your own perspectives and your own experiences to it. There's a lot that I wanted to say, and over here right now, I will speak a bit about what it is that I wanted to say in this book. But first of all, a brief overview of the two characters. So the book revolves around Agnimitra and Tamanna. Agnimitra is a prince of the Shunga dynasty. Shunga dynasty is what today in modern India would be in northern and central India. And the time period is 151 BCE. The reason I took this time period is because it's actually a very, very interesting time period. We tend to think of India as being divided into the Hindu period, the Muslim period, to be followed by the British, and then after the British left, the independence. But when one looks at the history, what happens is that there is a lot more of what we would call heterodoxy ideas, but they are equally valid. So there is Buddhism. In fact, huge amounts of Buddhist presence is there. There are the Jains, there are the Ajivakas, and most interestingly, all are the Charvakas. Now, Charvakas are what we would consider in modern times to be agnostic and atheists. So this is a fascinating time period, and because of that, I could bring that into my book. The second reason is Agnimitra's father, Pushimitra. He's the one who finished the Mauryan dynasty. The Mauryan dynasty we know is from Ashoka. So they were Buddhist. So these are the Buddhist rulers in India at this time. A lot of Buddhist ideas prevails. Agnimitra's dad is a commander in the army. He has the king killed. He doesn't like ostensibly his policy of non-violence. And once the king is killed, Pushimitra establishes the next empire, which is the Shunga dynasty. So with this backdrop, you can see that this is in contradiction to what the ideals which are presented, especially by a lot of ideologues of the Hindutva as well. And it's an opposite of what we have, this image of the Muslim rulers coming and destroying the Hindu rulers. But if you go back in time, the Hindu rulers are destroying the Buddhist kingdom. So this is the nature of power. So, and then the past interested me not only as the past, but its consequences in the present. Hence the character of Tamanna. Tamanna lives in modern day Pakistan, Karachi, and she has her own struggles and issues, especially a need for justice. So with these two characters in mind, I have weaved a novel together. Now, the thing is that, when I was writing the novel, one of the most important things that struck me, which was by my dad. He was a socio-political artist, and he said once at a painting, he looked at a painting and he said, that painting is like a nice armchair in which you can relax. And he was re-quoting Matisse, another painter. So the point was that a painting, a book, a musical piece cannot let go of its aesthetic value at the point of making political points or any other intellectual points. So ultimately, this is a fun novel. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So it's a fun novel. It's a novel that you can read in your free time, and it's something that is enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Amber. Tahir Saab, would you mind giving your impressions of the book as well, please?
I found the book fascinating for several reasons. One, of course, that it is a multi-layered narrative. You have the Hindu dynasties, and then you have the travel, which Agnimitra, which literally means friend of light, Agni, fire. So it's a Dionysius reference as well. And the way she's able to juxtapose both the myth and the legends with the current realities, the intermeshing, the meeting and mixing of various ideas is what is fascinating. And when I was reading this, and I read from the first to the last word, and what I found most fascinating was that it was metaphysical. Metaphysical not in the sense of spiritual, but metaphysical in the sense in which Dr. Samuel Johnson defined the metaphysical poets, which included John Donne, etc. And he called it, and I'll quote from this is his book on lives of poets. He said, metaphysical work of Donne, and I quote now, it is the most heterogeneous ideas that are yoked by violence together. So it is a deliberate attempt to break away from the classical tradition and introduce a new sense of reality, a new sense of perception, and a new sense of feeling, which is unprecedented. And I find that element very much in her book, in her novel, that she is able to extract ideas from various sources and put them together into a form which speaks to the reader. And that, I think, is its crowning achievement, that she's been able to do that. And this tradition of juxtaposing things which are opposing, it continues throughout her work. You have clash of ideas, you have clash of civilizations, you have clash of perception, and you have opposing ideas, whether they are philosophical or political. And that gives it the texture, the richness that one encounters page after page after page. I'd just like to say one more thing, that there is also humor, and the humor is balanced with the seriousness. And the striking thing about this work was that she takes contemporary issues and she takes issues that were in the past, and you begin to see the correlation between the two. You begin to sense that human nature is basically the same through the centuries. When there is power struggle, when there is an juxtaposition of opposing forces, it reminds one both of what is happening now and what occurred in the historical context in which she's placed a novel. And one other fascinating thing which I found, since being a practicing novelist myself, I feel that it's very essential. She simplifies complex ideas. Now, that's a difficult thing to do. Because if you're looking at philosophical ideas, you're looking at political ideas or social ideas, and she's mentioned the various ideologies that were at work at that time, Buddhist and Jain and Hindu, interacting with each other. She takes the complexity of their ideas and renders them so simply into dialogue or discussion between the characters, the protagonist and Tamanna, that one is fascinated by her grip on the framework of the intellectual traditions that she has read and imbibed and now is communicating and forwarding it to us through the medium of the novel. Fascinating novel. I urge all of you to buy a copy.
Thank you for that, Athar Sahab. In the same vein, I'm going to say that I really relished the fact and the way you kind of integrated historical fact with contemporary fiction. And we've kind of been seeing that in a lot of the recent published works in the last few years. There's There are Rivers in the Sky by Alif Shafak. There's The Curse of Mohenjo-daro by Maha Khan Phillips, Wayward by Amelia Hart, The Book Thief by Marcus Suzak. And that's what they always do, right? So my question is, why do you think there's a need to look back at our past and learn from our mistakes?
I think now it's too loud. Yeah. Okay, I'll try and speak softly. Thank you, Athar Saab. It is such a delight to have heard your words, and you've understood it so well and put it so beautifully, deeply touched. And Kamala, your question is a very, very good one. Why does past matter? The thing is because it has such a strong role in our present-day lives, in our present-day politics, and there are always those who want to use the past in order to segment their own power in present times. So there's always a certain vision of the past. Now, whose vision of the past will prevail? One thing that always fascinated me was not only just history, but the limitations of history. So when I would speak to, I was lucky enough to meet academicians, historians in my state, Oxford, London, places around the world. And when historians would speak, they would always speak with, according to this source, or they would say, this is what we know so far, or so there was a tentativeness in their understanding. But then when we move on to populist leaders and ideologues, they seem to know exactly what happened, how it happened. It was as if they were on the battlefield or they were in the room. They knew exactly. So it becomes, Muhammad Ghaznavi went Satra Dafa, and he kind of demolished the Somnath temple. Ethical issues aside, I mean, first of all, कोई फ़ख्र की बात नहीं है कि किसी के हम temple को जाके demolish करें. But apart from that, how do they know? And that's, the interesting thing, because the knowledge of the historians is very, very, very different. I'll interject an interesting example here. I had a dear friend, Sonia. So once when my mother passed away, she came and she stayed with us. And she's a solid historian, German. And she took my daughter and myself, and my daughter was very young, to the British Museum, and we were watching around. And as a kid, Dia was continuously asking, why, what, why, what, why? And I'm giving the answers as best I could. And then Sonia stops and looks at Dia, bends down to her level and says, also ask her mummy, how does she know? And parenting suddenly got extremely difficult. And it also made me realize how much of your knowledge is secondhand. I know because this plaque at the British Museum says it. I know Alexander's like that because I saw it in a movie. And then to make matters worse, we met up with another friend, Eamon, who's a historian. No, he's a writer and a philosopher, and history is also his passion. And he said, you must, Dia, not only ask your mother, how does she know, but why is it that she knows what she knows, and why does the other person knows what they know? Luckily, she was too young to understand that concept. Otherwise, I would be in deep trouble. So the thing is that, like I said, the moment then when you move to, for example, the older back you go in time, the more certain we are. So right now, if we were to, in our own experiences, we know that memory is quite fallible. 6 months from now, if all of us in this room were to meet again, we would have a different idea about what happened, who was there. In fact, we had a old schools reunion 2 days back and met up with a few friends. And our memories were so different. And some things our memories were so right, and some things we couldn't even remember an entire teacher. People, So we, in our personal experiences, we know very well how difficult it is to reconstruct our own past. But then the further back we go in time, the more it becomes certain. It becomes, because it's actually a story. It's not what we really know what really happened. Mahmud of Ghaznavi, 17 times going to demolish the Somnath temple in order to propagate Islam is just a narrative. It's just a story. When you read the historians on the subject, for example, Romila Thapar is brilliant. She tells us that the gates of Somnath, on which the whole thing is rested a lot, were not even in Somnath. They were from Afghanistan. They had nothing to do with Gujarat. But then what happens is when that narrative of the Somnath destruction gets into the popular imagination, then it justifies the destruction of the Babri Masjid. Now again, the scholars know that not much is known about, was there really a place where Lord Ram was born, and was there a mosque that was built after the demolishment of a temple? Historians know that very well, but ideologues don't. So I think many authors, many writers are trying to get to grips with this tension and bringing it maybe possibly in their works. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Amber. I'm going to ask you one last question. It's actually a quote from the book, which is really beautiful. It is not necessary for something to be visible to exist. We feel love, it can't be seen, yet it exists. And there's another line which says, if the unperceivable does not exist, then who paints the peacocks? So I think this resonated so much just because of the times we live in. We live in a time of hyper-consumerism, hyper-productivity, hyper-vigilance. We've lost that human connection. We live a cyber life which has become more important than our real life. And I think, in a way, and I dare say, our capacity to love, we've sort of lost that, right? So as an advocate of the written word, how do you see us moving forward from this?
Again, a very good question. First of all, these concerns, who paints the peacock, these are concerns this was an actual ancient text. So people have been worried about these ideas for a long time. Unfortunately, after the industrialization, and then now the present, of course, all that cyber revolution, we are becoming more and more disconnected from ourselves. I think it's two-level. One is, of course, at individual level, we try and fight it back and do it as best as we can. But at a collective level, these are things which need societal changes. So
especially for the kids, like I'm worried for the kids.
Yeah. It's very hard for them. But the thing is that, like, these are things that human beings have creatively, once they've thought about it, come up with answers. So if we get our minds together and think about it, one is hopeful to come up with some good solutions.
Great. Thank you for that, Amber. And I think we're going to open the floor for questions.
First of all, let me thank everybody that this book was brought up and it was being discussed, because I just recently read the book and I was bowled over. I mean, literally, because, and this is my first question, the book doesn't look attractive, I'm very sorry to tell you, and Tales of Agni, Mitra and Tamanna does not make for a title that would make you walk up and buy the book, quite frankly. If it was a more sensational title, it would be better, or more colorful cover. But nevertheless, I did read it, and I picked it up. I had no idea, even after reading the back cover, about what it was going to be like. But it was amazing. It was really amazing, and I was swept away with it. And I have to thank you for opening my eyes to so many believed historical facts, because I'm not saying that I've changed my mind, but at least I'm not thinking about them. Thank you.
Let's give Amber a big hand, because even if you can convert one person, that's a feat in itself.
So I haven't read the book, but I will buy it now because I love to read it.
She's a prolific reader, by the way.
But you know, they say history is written by the victors, right? So how does that, how do you counter? Because it's the people who lost the battle have no voice. So how do you kind of work with the historical fiction? Because एक ही आवाज होगी ना फिर, दूसरी आवाज तो है ही नहीं. And that's the history we are taught.
So I'll answer your first question. As the traditional wisdom goes, don't judge a book by its cover. So I hope by word of mouth, people will talk about it. And no, in modern times, a lot of books are very exciting. I think I wanted to be honest as much as possible about the title, which is that it's not history. These are tales. And these are tales of Agnimitra and Tamanna. So it's not claiming to be there and then. It's saying it's a work of fiction in the title. But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
May I make a comment?
Yes, please.
With your permission, I'm taking your time, but the other thing I wanted to highlight was the structure, because as a novelist or a creative writer, you are always worried about how to structure what you feel or perceive or think. The structure here was very complicated, and yet it seemed very simple as you go along and look at the tales that she narrates. The structure owes a lot to the tradition in Persian and Arabic. If you look at 1001 Nights, which influenced Garcia Marquez, who won the Nobel Prize for his works in magical realism, those ideas are embedded in a structure. You have Atar, Conference of the birds flying off to realize themselves and discovering in the end that it is they themselves who are to be discovered. Or you look at Rumi, or look at Iqbal's Javeednama, Rumi's Masnavi, Dante's, the Divine Comedy. All those works have this convoluted structure in which things are regurgitated and reintroduced in a more simplified manner. So I think that structure which she's been able to achieve is also something which speaks volumes for her creative construction.
Can I just, you're absolutely right. Those who are the victors have a lot of control, and they are the ones in charge, especially of the official text. But the ones who lose often leave their voices, and that's why historians know so much. And often the voices of the ones who've lost are found in their songs, in their stories, in other mediums. There's one example I'll quickly give because I know we are short of time. Alexander, we call him Alexander the Great, although there's absolutely nothing great about what he did. He came, he conquered, he killed. And a lot of history books talk about this great man who used to sleep with a book of Aristotle under his head, and he conquered the world, and he was the bringer of the Western ideals, blah, 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 blah. And then you listen to the Jain sources, and they have these lovely, humorous anecdotes. So one of them is like Alexander, when he died, was buried with his hands above, zameen se bahar, to wo khali haath gaya. Another is a story about these Jain monks tell him, you're up to no good. All you're doing is you're creating destruction and death, and soon you'll be gone. So these voices of the ones who did not win the battle are still there. They're just in different texts.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. I went to the Sin Literature Festival last week. Mike, please.
ये वाला दे, ये वाला।
So I went to the Sin Literature Festival last weekend just to buy books, not to be a part of the festival as such. But I picked up this book, which is what I was taking out a picture of, and it's something very similar. It's oral stories from Punjab. And I think when I'm going to read that, I'm definitely going to get in touch with Kamla about it, because I think, like you said, it's the ones who lose, then the stories become oral and maybe not written down. But I think it's quite pertinent to what you said.
Am I audible? Yeah, so my question is a bit from the anthropological perspective. So the era that you are covering in this regarding Agnimitra, this is basically the before the invaders came to the subcontinent, the rise and fall of different sultanates and colonization and all of those periods. So a little about the context. How different did you find the basic subconscious and the basic psychology of the common man in the subcontinent compared to what we study in the contemporary history?
I think I'll speak with this. Thank you for your question. The thing is that wars, conquest have been going much beyond before in time. So there were, when there was lesser technology, the areas that they managed to conquer are smaller. So, for example, the area will, like a person who's fighting with a sword will get, of course, tired faster than the one who has a gun. So with that dynamic in mind, that is the difference which comes. Apart from that, human nature is pretty much the same. They want to conquer, they want to kill, they want to establish their power. And the one who has been defeated is the one who will be maligned. So when Pushimitra Shunga comes into power, he says the previous one had a policy of non-violence, which actually sounds very strange, And then he also said, and he was not a believer of the Vedas. When the Shunga dynasty ends and the next one comes, they say the previous dynasty was a lot about womanizing and they were not interested in ruling. We are the better rulers. So the language is the same, the desire for power is the same. What has changed over the years is we can be more brutal because we have now technology that can kill more. And we are now further and further away from the people that one can kill. So if you can press a button and kill, then the magnitude of the destruction becomes more.
Thank you everyone for attending, and please go and buy this book. It's worth it. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Congratulations, Amber, and thank you, Akhar Saab, for attending. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next session which we are going to have is meditation, spirituality and absolute intelligence. In conversation with Naeem Zamidar by Rahila Bakai.